Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us here on Ask 9.
Yeah.
I'm Becky Phelps.
And I'm Jim Merton. So are you a freak like me? Here's the thing. I bought a house.
Okay. Okay. In that regard. I don't think so.
I'm not quite sure what regard you were insinuating right now.
I thought you were quoting a song.
No. Maybe. I don't know. I'm not hip. Maybe I am. I bought a house shortly after I got here. And my real estate agent would send me an email that had houses within my price range. And I bought this house like 2.5 years ago. I still get that email daily and look at the 10 or 12 houses. My brother, when he used to walk his dog around the neighborhood, would always be looking at other people's houses to see what renovations they did inside. So I'm like scoping up houses in a less creepy way.
Okay, so in the it's fun to use Zillow as a social media app kind of way.
Yeah.
Yes, I am occasionally a freak like that.
I am in love with a couple houses, and then within the price range and all that, I'm going, oh man, if I would have held out, if I would have done A, B, or C.
You do that.
I do that a lot.
In the newsroom sometimes you'll be like, everybody come look at this house. It's really weird in this particular way.
Well, because sometimes it's really weird. There was one where it looked like the Mona Lisa picture was sitting on an easel. I'm going, what is that? I mean, and some people have very interesting choices of paint color or
if you're
design.
Going to stage your home, you
well, they're not
make it
staged.
different.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
You gotta stand out. You gotta get Jim's attention.
Yes, exactly, or somebody else's. But I mean, it's just interesting to see the houses that are available in the different neighborhoods, the different styles, different sizes, and whether it is a buyer's market or a seller's market. And when I bought my house, when I sold my house in Davenport, it was a seller's market. It was still a seller's market when I bought my house, so I bought it a little too high, I think. Now it's kind of transferring again into a buyer's market where prices are kind of falling in some areas. When I keep an eye on it, this is just me watching, and it looks like buyers have a little bit better options right now.
That is interesting.
That's just my impression of what's going on.
And most of my knowledge about owning a home or buying a home comes from news stories that we do, or you and TV9's Brian Tabak talking about the different homes on the market in the area.
Well, Brian's a first-time home buyer, and he went through the process, and he learned an awful lot. But there's a certain thing, it's fun to have a house.
Yeah, well, you talk about all the projects you do.
Yeah, and I'm just dopey and dumb that way, and I just like doing stuff like that. So I tried to buy a house that wasn't necessarily perfect, something I could fix up, because I spent 25 years fixing up my last house, absolutely perfect, and then left.
Of course, as it always goes.
So I'm weird that way.
Now, we aren't talking about this just for the fun of it, although I do think we could do an entire segment on the projects that Jim does in his house.
Yeah, I could talk forever.
We have been hearing this week about a potential plan from the White House to introduce a 50-year mortgage. So what we are looking at tonight for Ask 9 is what the impact could be of a 50-year mortgage. This is interesting. I have done a lot of learning about this today. So right now that's not legal.
No, 30-year.
The max is a 30-year mortgage.
Mm-hmm. So basically, a lot of people do 30s or they do 15s.
So this would take an act of Congress to do. And the White House is saying that they're considering it because affordability is so bad. There is a home affordability crisis happening in the country, which is true.
And as people understand, I mean, if a house is worth A, if you spread it out a longer period of time, your monthly payments would be less.
Yes.
Makes sense.
Sure, in theory, except then you are signing on to an additional 20 years of paying off your home.
Yeah, and of course, then the interest rate accrues, and you're actually paying far more oftentimes than the house is worth just on interest alone over the course of that 50 years. The other interesting thing is, according to the National Association of Realtors, and I didn't know this, the average first-time home buyer is 40 years old.
I learned this today too.
So take a 40-year-old buying a house with a 50-year mortgage, you're going to be still paying a mortgage in your 90s? Not likely.
No, and it doesn't seem like something a bank would want to sign on to either.
Oh, no, a bank would love it because they're going to get all the interest rate money.
But if you make it to 90.
Yeah, well, that's fair. But you're still going to be... Here's the thing, is that when you're first buying a house, your monthly payments, is not going towards equity. It's just paying for interest. In other words, the lender, I should say, is going to get its money first. And then at the end, once you pay off all of that, then you start paying down the house. You know, if your first mortgage payment is probably 95% interest rate and 5% on equity in the house, and then it slowly increases. So that's why, I mean, owning a house, you sometimes have to own it for a while in order to really get your money back, or you have to, of course, sell your house at a higher price to get your money back.
We are fortunate enough here at TV9 to have many experts walking through our doors every day. And so we had Jim Miller, who is the Vice President of Development for Horizons Family Services, come in for a midday segment, totally unrelated to this. And he was kind enough to sit down with one of our producers and answer some questions about the possible impacts of this plan to introduce a 50-year mortgage. So we're going to listen to that interview now, some clips from that interview, and then we're going to talk about some of the numbers about this.
Personally, I see a 50-year mortgage as predatory. On the surface, if you are a new home buyer, you look at that, and of course we all understand it comes down to the monthly payment. Is it $500, $700, $1,500, or whatever it is? So certainly stretching it 20 more years makes that monthly payment less. Of course, anyone that pays a mortgage knows that for the first half of your mortgage, you're paying the interest. You're paying this much principal and this much interest. So all you're doing is postponing that 20 years to find yourself in a 50-year mortgage.
When you're paying off all this interest, what does that mean for your equity on your house if you're looking 10 years down the road you need to do something with that loan?
Well, and that's where the math doesn't work. That you have a house that's a mortgage that's $200,000 or $300,000. So of course for the first X number of years, you're paying this tiny amount on the principal. So you're not building up equity. You're paying for the interest is what you're doing for the first number of years. So if you need to do home improvements, or you need a second mortgage, or your whole life situation changes, you don't have any equity. You have so little equity in that home. And by stretching it 20 more years, that's a 40% increase between 30 and 50 years to say the math simply does not work.
What do you think the likelihood would be that something like this would even come to pass?
Never say never, as we are learning with many things, but I think it's unlikely. Again, by law, a mortgage is limited to 30 years. So I tell myself I find it hard to believe that Congress, a majority of Congress, is going to say we're going to increase this by 20 years. Again, the things I've read, the things I've watched, again, they're widespread. There are so many people with concerns about this. And again, I come back to, I think it's predatory for those folks that might be 20 years old or 30 or 40 to say, new home buyer, and they tempt you with a smaller payment, and then you are locked into this for the rest of your life.
I thank you, Jim. That was Jim Miller, the VP of Development for Horizons Family Services.
We should also point out that there has been reporting since this was announced, and the president had put it on social media and all that. And reporting from The Hill was that the White House was blindsided by this. The idea was coming from Bill Pulte, who's the FHFA, the Federal Housing Finance Agency Director, who suggested this. And it was interesting because during an interview for The Hill, the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, was asked about it, and so was, I don't have the guy, the counselor to Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. His name is Joe Lavorgna, and he said that this proposal, he said, that was one proposal that the Treasury Department's been considering. The feedback has been such that probably not an optimal approach. So even the White House is backtracking a bit from this, which is interesting. But it is an interesting idea.
It is, and the idea that something should be done to help the housing crisis makes
affordability.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
In that way. But this, a lot of experts strongly pushing back on it. Mm-hmm. We did some data research from the Associated Press, and this was interesting to me.
Sure.
The average selling price of a home across the whole United States in September was $415,000.
We're talking about first-time home buyers too.
Yeah.
You know, that's the average.
That's
Yeah.
a lot. As someone who does not own a home, that sounds crazy. Now, we did want to look in Iowa specifically.
Sure.
Zillow says the Iowa housing market, the average is $227,000. So significantly less than the average across the country, which does make sense. You know, I'm sure a home in California is a lot more expensive.
Absolutely, and you could find quality houses basically. I would say about 150 in that area. But I mean, you could find fixer-uppers. You know, you can go 80, 90, which you're a little worried about the bones of the structure. 125 maybe for a starter home, 150, probably closer to 150, 175 in that area.
The AP did an analysis estimating how much more someone would pay over a 50-year than a 30-year.
Yeah, tell me.
A borrower would pay roughly an additional $389,000 in interest over the life
On a particular type
on
of
a
house.
50-year mortgage
Yeah,
compared to a 30-year mortgage.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it is a lot. But here's the other thing that I was wondering in regards to this idea of a 50-year mortgage is that a 50-year mortgage means, in theory, that you would pay less at the beginning because you're borrowing for a longer time. Just because you get a 50-year mortgage doesn't mean that albatross is around your neck for 50 years. If you think about it, you could refinance at some point. So you
true.
So I wonder if it isn't necessarily a terrible idea because you get it for you get the 50-year mortgage, and just like you have an ARM, an adjustable rate mortgage, as you might know, with a balloon payment, is that you pay less for a certain number of years and then it goes up. So, I mean, my very first house, I got a 7-year ARM. So,
Okay.
it was 7 years at a lower rate, and then at the 7th year, whoosh. And you're gambling two things. One is that you're not going to own the house for more than 7 years. And the other thing is that maybe interest rates are going to fall, and you can refinance before that. Well, if you think about it, if you're getting a 50-year, you could refinance before that. Now, that costs more money, of course, to refinance. And you're betting on a lower rate, but it is possible.
Yeah, it is. It feels like a gamble. The whole thing feels. I can't imagine the extra pressure that comes with having to refinance that and figure that out for the long term. What the best year by year, what the best plan is.
Well, the whole thing about refinancing, and I know I'm getting off topic here, is that you go to you go to your banker or you go to your loan person. They're the ones that figure it out and whether or not it's worth it for you to do it. Because you have to have assessed, your house has to be, you start basically starting from scratch because you're selling your house to yourself. When you're actually selling your house, you don't own your house. Your bank, your lender owns your house. You're actually selling your house to another lender, I guess, is a better way of saying it. And if it's worth it, they'll take it.
Yeah.
It is interesting.
It is.
Here's the thing: is that first, owning a house is one of the best things I ever did. And anybody knows that if once you get a house, all you can do is hopefully build off the equity and keep improving. You know, your first house, hopefully your second house is better, your third house is better. You know, and that you don't go. The gamble is that you paid for a house and it loses value. That's what you don't want to have. You just be very careful on that first purchase, and you build equity off of that. It's a good thing. Home ownership's a good thing if you can afford it. And I think the nation knows this, and we saw it with the post-war, the baby boomers, the 40s and the 50s and the 60s. Home ownership was so incredibly important, and it really built this country. Problem is, it's not building the country now. It's just very tough to get your foot into the door and to get literally that first house.
This has been, as a non-homeowner, a very educational topic for me. It's been very, very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, will start maybe with a condo instead, and hopefully you build equity because it's the same process.
Sure.
A condo being, I mean, the only difference is basically you don't have to mow the lawn,
That's a perk.
Yeah, well, for a lot of people, or you do have HOA fees, and you may have a shared wall with somebody. So I kind of consider it in some ways like owning a townhouse or owning an apartment. I'm just not my favorite thing. I like having my distance from my neighbors I love. It's nice not to have a shared wall with everyone, But I mean, for some people, condo living is absolutely fantastic.
Well, we will keep an eye on any new indications from the White House on any plans to address the home affordability crisis. We will, of course, keep an eye on if this particular plan makes any movement. But thank you guys so much for joining us here tonight on Ask 9. As always, if you have any questions you'd like us to look into, send us a message on Facebook or email us. Have a great evening.